How's everybody doing? My name is Jabari Jefferson. I will be hosting this month's Artist Talk at Art of Noise, located in Washington, D.C. We're here on this lovely Sunday to celebrate two talented artists, D.C. Washingtonians, who have come together for a dual show featuring mixed media on many different canvases and ranges of materials. And without further ado, we're going to get started. Gentlemen, why don't you guys introduce yourselves?
Thank you. My name's Alonzo Robles-Gordon.
I'm John Lister III.
Wonderful, wonderful. So we're going to get started. And the first thing I want to talk about is how we came to be here today. What's the origin story that brought us together? How did we get into the arts, and how did this show kind of come about? Why don't we start with you?
Individually, or how did we?
Well, first individually. I'll introduce you to the people so they know who you are.
Cool. So I'm originally from Arlington, Virginia. So growing up, myself, sister, and my mom, my mom used to take us to every single Smithsonian there was. Almost every weekend. So we saw all the art. We take I believe it's every Saturday there's the Millennium Stage, so we see live shows and performances. So that was really my introduction to the arts, just growing up, and in every school that I went to, I was in love with the various art classes we had. Additionally, my sister, she knew she wanted to be an artist from day one. So when we were younger, we shared the same room. Excuse me. So I'd literally be playing with my Legos, and she would be making artwork. So I'd be making buildings and stuff, and just all over the walls in our room would be collages and paintings, and portraits and rippings from magazines and so forth.
It's so interesting how environment plays such a role in our creativity and our trajectory, especially family.
Absolutely.
Association and stuff like that. What about you, John?
What was the question?
Well, the question is, what was a bit of your origin story in the arts? What got you into the arts?
What brought me into the arts was that basically when I was a kid, around 2 years old as a baby, my grandmama, she introduced crayons and coloring books to me, and I was also, as 2 years old, would flip over my oatmeal and would, play in it and draw symbols and shapes with it, kind of abstract as a baby. So I basically came into art just by something that's just innate with me. So no, nothing really brought me to it. It's just something I just did coming out the womb,
That's beautiful. That's very unique too. I don't think I've ever heard a story like that, but I can relate to that for sure. Even myself being an artist. So getting into this show, when I first came into the show, it was a pleasant surprise to see successful aesthetics with two people that work well with each other. And anyone could take this question: how did this show idea come about? You want to take that, John?
You said how did the show come about?
Yeah, how did this show come about? The idea and everything.
Honestly, the show came about. I was looking for a black gallery, and I wanted to try and get try to get my name out there in the D.C. area because I already started out in the Maryland area and also with my home territory in Louisiana. Mm-hmm. So when I started looking towards expanding out in D.C., I found Art of Noize. Talked to a couple of artists that I met through Instagram, and they said a lot of good things about Art of Noize. So I figured I'd go ahead and hit them up. Next thing you know, he hit me back and said, hey, would you be interested in a duo show? I said, hell yeah. And next thing you know, this is how I got here.
Exactly. And shout out to Art of Noize again for just being such a wonderful, wholesome space. It's always a treat to be here. So let's just get into it even more. For one, we're going to veer off the pressures a bit. My own curiosity. What's your favorite work on the show?
Wow. I guess it'd probably have to be this one right here. Feeling good, feeling great. How are you?
You mind describing it real quick for those that can't see and tell us why that's your favorite piece?
Sure. It's about a 24 across by 36 down piece of artwork. It's a paper collage on dye bond, and it's a very, very bright red. Um, yeah, and it's composed of just multiple strips of paper, um, just overlaid on each other to create a kind of, let's say, wave-like texture.
And while we're on your work, I'm a mixed media artist myself, so I can definitely appreciate and respect your process. When I was looking at your work, the first thing I noticed is it seems so time consuming, such small pieces that in my opinion, I thought took a lot of time, but after talking to you, it seems it comes rather natural to you. Can you tell us a little bit about your source material and how you go about that?
Gotcha. So for that particular piece, and really all the, I guess the other two pieces that are one color, I guess the proper term is monochromatic, but they're Amazon. I'm looking for the a very high quality construction paper, archival, of course, and yeah, and then from there, it's literally just, you know, watching a documentary or something and just stripping every single one of those 200 or so pieces of paper into very little strips. Yeah.
Wow, that's that's always amazing. I love artists that's able to take things that weren't for something else and manipulate it into something completely brand new, especially with over 200 different sources in it. So that's beautiful. And John, going into your work, first thing that I noticed is your work seems very musical. Um, what are the specific inspirations that came with making your work? Is it a certain type of sound that you're interested in, or a certain type of artist references?
For me, the references and the inspiration comes from my work comes from various artists and various movements. Um, but for the most part, I like to convey, African American history and also African diaspora history and just history of West Africa in general, just sort of to help build the self esteem of African Americans in this country because we really don't have a lot of artwork that shows the vast history outside of what white folks want us to represent and what we want to convey with them. So with my artwork, as you can see, I have numerous references to various things dealing with the African Holocaust as my collage. I also have relevance to the Haitian Revolution and also Nat Turner's conquest and just things dealing with the African mass because what I want blacks to see is that outside of what is acceptable in this country, there are things that are not acceptable, which is very, very valuable to our survival of this country with our psychology, with our psyche, and what we have with self-esteem, because we have self-esteem issues. So a lot of times when you see, looking at a piece, just like the Battle of Her Tears, you get to understand, that was a very, very critical, pivotal moment in the Haitian Revolution. Just like with Nate Turner's War Face, you get a chance to see how they try to say we're black identity extremists, but you look at these pieces, the one thing you want to see is this is why we are considered black identity extremists. And then what happened on January 6th, it kind of pushed my buttons and then you want to label us identity extremists, and then things happen on January 6th. It's like, if anything, we should have been the ones that was storming the Capitol, but that's neither here nor there. But I just kind of like want to put things in perspective for blacks to show them that, hey, this is our history. This is rich history. We're not going to get no movies made of it. So the only way that I can do it is by being a visual grill and let it be known like this is our history.
Wow, that's very profound. I appreciate you sharing that, and I'm one for symbolism as well. That's why I can appreciate your crown that you have on for sure. Do you have a favorite piece in the show yourself?
I have numerous favorite pieces, but if I was going to tell you my two favorite pieces, honestly, it would be King's Rage and Nat Turner's Warface.
Okay, and real quick, since everyone can't see it, do you mind giving a quick description of King's Rage?
King's Rage is right behind you. It's actually a self-portrait of mine. What came about with King's Rage was I was wrongfully arrested out in Howard County because they tried to say that I was drinking and driving, which I wasn't. I have what they call a disability because I have a pinched femoral nerve, and I also have two bulging discs in my L3 and L4. So if you look at a lot of my artwork, you'll see a lot of anatomy and physiology and medical with it. This particular piece, you don't get a chance to see that other than the sutures near the mouth, which represents my surgical scars when they had to fix my leg. But anyway, that night, I blew into a breathalyzer 6 times, 2 different machines, 3 times each, and it came out inconclusive, and they still arrested me. So just dealing with that, just thinking about that, just figured, I'll go ahead and convey my rage all in artistic form, and you got King's Rage.
Wow, a very fitting title, and I appreciate you sharing that with us for sure. I'm sure it's a lot of different people in the audience that's watching us that can relate to something similar. So I appreciate that. Alonzo, you mentioned something about your process, and you said you like to pop on some documentaries while you're working and just get into it. So what's the studio life like? Like, is it, do you always go to documentaries while you're working? What gets you in the zone?
That's a dope question. um, so sometimes it's music, sometimes, I guess of late, and they're kind of in two different spectrums. I've been listening to FKA Twigs and then Freddie Gibbs.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
right?
yeah, I'm
Yep.
starting to appreciate Freddie Gibbs.
There you
Yeah.
go. Yep. So other times it's documentaries. For a while now, it's been space or documentaries on space, black holes, like terraforming Mars, that sort of stuff. And then I guess the other side is kind of like my favorite movies. I assume that everybody has, let's say, like 20 movies that they go to every now and then. Same movie, just inspirational, and yeah. So
Yeah,
it's
you have a bit of a ritual in a way when you create, or does it kind of change from time to time?
no, I mean it does change from time to time, but it's essentially the same sort of ritual. The same topics. Yeah.
Are you a studio junkie? How often you be in the studio working?
Um, as much as I can. Yeah.
No, that's one thing amongst artists, that we live in the studio, and some artists are more extreme than others. But I totally understand what that life is like.
Yep.
For sure. What about you, John? What's your studio rituals? What are you doing when you're making the work? You listening to something? You watching anything?
So my ritual, right? So basically, my ritual is what you would think stereotypically of a black artist. Put a lot of jazz music on. I light my incense. I speak incantations. Basically what I want to try to perceive and create positive energy for the type of things I'm going to do with certain pieces. And you may have a drink here or there. Smoke it if you got it, things like that. And then, open up some art books, history books, novels, anything where I can try to piece together different types of atmospheres, elements of things that's going on in my time at that, and try to piece it all together and put it on the canvas or the wood panel. So that's pretty much it. Like, I have this ritual. My ritual usually lasts about 20 minutes each time, from me lighting my incense to finally picking up a media and then just start making the first mark.
So your studio practice seems spiritual with the incense and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's I guess you could kind of say it's more like voodoo. When I was in college, my professor called me the voodoo child, and there's a very, very crazy story behind that as well. But because due to the process of me, doing things like that and going through the process of using hoodoo and things like that, create my artwork, my professor did start labeling me the voodoo child, and yeah, just as soon as you find that first track, that one that fills you with energy, depending on how you feel at that moment, you then can go ahead and make that first mark. So it's funny you mentioned the ritual, because the ritual is very important. You got to do the ritual. I don't think any artist that I know of makes art without doing some type of ritual, whether they believe it or not. They have a ritual.
No, for sure. Who's your favorite jazz musician? You mentioned jazz.
Oh man, I have a lot. Of course, we'll stick to my namesake, John Coltrane,
Always.
Nina Simone, Charlie Parker, Dizzy Gillespie, Satchmo. God, like Satchmo. Satchmo.
Taking it back.
Yeah, Satchmo was unique because when I finally got a chance to go down to New Orleans for my first time, and for my first show, solo show, I was down there in New Orleans, and just sitting there listening to Satchmo, just hearing the music that's around there and all that, I finally got a chance to immerse myself exactly what Satchmo was doing. So it felt like I was taken back to the 40s and 30s, where I could actually sit there and hear like the kind of things and the elements, everything that was going on. So yeah, definitely got to be Satchmo. Satchmo's up there.
say John Coltrane. I'm sure you're familiar with Alice Coltrane, his wife. So
Yeah.
you will, I think you enjoy her work as well. So going into your work, the specific question that I'm interested with you is, I'm sure you get this a lot, but is there a relationship or some type of inspiration you get from Basquiat and his style?
Well, it's funny that you mentioned that. Me and him share a lot of similarities, which I find kind of crazy. But when it comes to Basquiat, I feel like me and him, we both use the same type of media. So a lot of people are going to say a correlation with that. With the crown, uh, his use of crown and my use of crown, it kind of overlaps each other because the real reason why I got the nickname the Voodoo Child, my professor Briscoe at Morgan State, he called me a Voodoo Child because one day I came to the classroom, I told him about a dream I had. Since I was a little baby up to now, I always had dreams of meeting the deceased, whether it be past, present, or famous or non-famous. I always had dreams about the deceased. So one day I came to him, I told him about a story, about a dream where Basquiat had came to my classroom, life drawing class for Professor Jones at Morgan State. And prior to him talking and everything like that, he leaves and he comes back and he gives me his crown. And while he's handing me his crown turns from his crown to my crown, which come to find out when I woke up in the morning is literally my initials, which is JL3. So if you look at the crown behind you, to the right-hand side, that's the L, which is 90 degrees. So you got the L right there, which is Lister. And then you look on the left-hand side, you see the J, and that's John. And then on top, you see the 3, which is laid on top. And that's how I got my crown, which is JL3. And another thing, when I was in the hospital with sick children, when I was in a wheelchair for a year, getting my leg fixed because I had what they call an LOD, which is limb lengthening disorder. So my left leg was 4 centimeters shorter than my right leg. So upon being in the hospital for sick children, I met Nurse Emma. Nurse Emma was from the Virgin Islands. She's the first person I ever met from the Virgin Islands. And I used to harass her a lot because I was bored and nothing else to do. My leg was in a sling. So one day she gave me Grey's Anatomy and she said, "Stop harassing me, boy. Draw something out of this," because you like to draw. So I started drawing things out of Grey's Anatomy. And then, since there was nothing really on the new, like the channels we could watch, I always had access to the newborn channel. So I used to watch the newborn channel and see how fertility played in and see the gestation of human beings and, in life and everything that from conception and all that. So you'll see that in my artwork as too with fertility. And also it calls back to my favorites, which I share with Basquiat, such as John Dubuffet. I might got the name wrong because I hardly ever hear these names. John Dubuffet, Pablo Picasso, Cy Twombly, Roy Lichtenstein. I'm kind of like Andy Warhol, but not really though. But I did like Andy Warhol's pop art with his logos and things like that. So I try to carry everything I see visually from art history all up to things I see in life and try to convey with that. Plus aspects of me being a Louisiana boy. So you'll see some similarity between me and Basquiat. But, I get that a lot. But like I said, when you use crayon, oil sticks, spray paint, and being born in 85, and Basquiat was born in 60, so when he came about, all this new media that we're using just started being in the forefront. So, of course, I'm naturally going to pick it up because I was only 3 when he passed away.
Wow, that was pretty profound, man. You got a interesting life. Shout out to Nurse Emma, too, and the healthcare that's always just giving us inspiration, even if they don't know they are doing it. That's very beautiful. Wow. So, going into the work, where do you source these materials from? I see a lot of references of the enslaved and the ships that they were captured on. Where did you get this from? Is it something specific? Was it mass copied, or are you sourcing these from somewhere?
I remember when I was in kindergarten, right? So when I was in kindergarten, I had a knack for art, and they used to wake me up 30 minutes early in nap time and used to get me started on my arts and crafts. Because my work was so good, my work, when it was time for back to school night, mine would be at the highest of the hierarchy, and then the teachers, and then everyone else's. And one thing I mainly remember from kindergarten and through 1st through 6th grade was always the use of paper mache and collages. And, growing up and seeing different types of collages, finding out about Romari Burden, things like that, Basquiat, where he would use a collage and things like that. I tried to use my hand on it because in college, I never really cared about paper. paper to me was something I thought was kind of flimsy. It wasn't really something you can really make malleable to create certain types of priceless works. But when I took a class with my professor Briscoe at Morgan State, he had us use a lot of cold press paper, 22 by 30. So by using that, I got a chance to see just how durable paper is. And then from there, you start looking at other artists' works that you grew up in time, especially Romari Bearden, where how he would piece together different types of images from different types of papers. You can kind of get different things. And then with Basquiat, where how he would use paper collages and drawings to make backgrounds, and then you paint over top of it. And then you even saw Picasso and Matisse and how they would use papers. So you just get to see a lot of paper use, and then eventually you say, let me try my hand on it. And I came up with the idea of taking the African Holocaust and see what type of visual elements I could create with it and snatch from different type of instances. So if you were to take a look at Nat Turner's Warface, you will see certain types of elements with my crayon in orange, where you see certain types of strikes. That's a call to Cy Twombly's with his abstraction. Because I fell in love with Cy Twombly's markings. Cy Twombly was probably my first abstract artist that I actually fell in love with. Most people would like Jackson Pollock. That's fine. I like Cy Twombly because he used everyday items. And he always said, my work is childlike, but I'm not a child. And that always called home to me because, when you're a kid, that's how I started in art, and it always calls back to my childhood, just making actual marks, just using certain types of rudimentary media. So that's one thing you see right there. Then you see me progress with the oil sticks. And then you see all of that right there, which is why, call back to the Black identity extremists. Everything that's going on in Nat Turner's life, you see all of that surrounding him. It is making him crazy. Mm-hmm. So how can you sit here and say I'm a Black identity extremist, but you take a look at my history, it's not me being a Black identity extremist. It's me basically reacting to the harsh environment that you provided us in. We got to be like water. So with that instance and everything like that, I fell in love with the West African mass. You see some influences in there. Of course, like I say, Cy Twombly, West Africa. And then you see my use of the paper collage, things like that. And then the oil sticks, which gives different types of media. And then also the spray paint to call back to the times when I was in Baltimore. And I got a chance to get involved with some of the graffiti era. So.
Wonderful, wonderful. So we're going to just switch as we start to move forward. I'm interested in how things has been for you guys on a contemporary note. With us dealing with this pandemic, a lot of multitude of simultaneous things happening at the same time around the planet, and I'm sure it can be rather stressful. And so I'm curious, how has just being an artist and staying creative been for you specifically throughout this whole pandemic?
Well, for a while, I actually just stopped making art. We've all experienced the same thing, just a plethora of various types of nonsense happening. And I kind of just shied away from making art. A good amount of my time, I actually didn't stop work. Well, that's not true. I stopped working for maybe about a month. I'm an art installer. Mm-hmm. But in terms of work, this has been the busiest time because everyone's been home, looking at their blank walls. So I've been installing for a while during this period of time. So it was a combination of kind of not having time to make art and not having the headspace to make art. But when I was contacted by Adrian for the opportunity to have a show with John, that kind of stirred something in me to create what we see here. Yeah.
And that's why institutions and places like the Art of Noize is such a necessity and such a treat, because they offer a space for artists and just the community in general to be able to come together and still have bright times. So shout out to the gallery director and everyone for always having this. What about yourself? How did the pandemic affect you and your work?
The pandemic didn't affect me at all. In fact, I actually enjoyed it. I got a chance to lock myself in, and build wood panels and just focusing on my artwork. In fact, I actually want to see the fall of civilization,
That's real honest.
Some people might say it's a fatalist mentality. It's just that I just got disgusted with seeing everything in the social atmosphere of life and everything, and just seeing everything was gone. So this is something I actually was waiting for, because, like I said, I have crazy dreams. So the one dream I had a dream where the Baron Saint Mandy was taking me throughout different landmarks throughout, Earth, and I got the chance to see different types of riots and the place on fire. And that was roughly 5 years before everything happened. So when I started seeing everything go along that way, I started telling everybody, like, look, I had this dream, this crazy dream. People are gonna be protesting. People are gonna be quitting jobs, worker protests. I kind of was hoping for it. And I said, at the end of the day, if the world were to end, hey, I'll be here with my paintbrush. So I was happy. I didn't have any issue with it. In fact, I kind of want everything to kind of shut down again, so I can just focus on my artwork.
You'd be surprised. It's not the first time I actually heard anything like that. However, I'm curious of who you were in your past life. You may have been like a priest or something in your previous life or something.
You said what?
You may have been like a priest or something in your previous life.
I don't know, man. Like I said, those dreams I have, like, they're kind of like prophecy-like dreams, or just mostly just crazy dreams in general. But like I said, it was because of my dreams why my professor called me the voodoo child anyway. So, it could very well be. I could have been something in my past life, but I kind of just, just look at things, just get kind of tired of it,
I get that. So, gentlemen, can you let us know what's next for you guys? Like, what's next on your plate in terms of maybe type of goals you may have? Or where can we find you?
I'm gonna start posting on my Instagram page. It's something that I don't do at all. So, and I actually made that promise to Adrian. Thank you for the coaching. Um, what's next for me? I want to continue making art. I want to actually go larger. We're looking at this wall in front of us, and like, I think it'd be just awesome to be able to have an installation, where I'm covering the entire wall in, paper mosaic collage type scenario, and more shows. So
I
I'm
would
looking
love
for
to
more
see your work
opportunities.
much larger. I can see how. I mean, it'd be very time consuming, but I can see the impact of how that'll feel
Yep.
for sure.
Yeah.
What about yourself, man? What's next for you? What's next for you as we move forward after the show is over and everything like that?
What's next for me, honestly, I want actual art domination. I didn't come in this thing to make a lot of money. I didn't come in this thing to really make buku friends. I actually came in this thing to be in the history books. With artists, there is no 401k for us. There really is no real accolades or things like that in that nature other than being in our history and people to cover us after a certain amount of years after we're dead. So with that, I just want to be able to say at the end of the day, before I close my eyes and I take my last breath, my work is seen with Augustus Savage. It's seen with Jacob Lawrence. It's seen with Aaron Douglas. It's seen with Mari Bearden. It's seen with James Van Der Zee. It's seen with Jean-Michel Basquiat. It's seen with Henry Matisse. It's seen with Pablo Picasso. I want the history books. So from here on out, then my next thing I want to do is try to score more solo shows, try to venture out to new markets, new areas, new countries, and just try to get my name out there so I can finally come together with my ultimate magnus opus, which is my masterpiece, which is called Mending the Spear. As I told you earlier, I'm more concerned with the social self-esteem of Black people in this country and also globally. And I believe with art, we can visually correct the social self-esteem of us by showing Black art instead of showing the Black art, which is what is acceptable amongst us, which is the Christianity, the Black love, all of this. It's like, oh, that's fine and dandy. But right now, we're surrounded by, different types of warfare, and that could be the first step. So my main thing right now is get solo shows, get the history books, and then start preparing my Mending the Spear.
His brother, he's not coming to play. He said domination. I like that. Okay. My last question, I would say, is in terms of the audience, what do you want the audience to take away from their work? Of course, art is, and it's all ambiguous and whatever people think, but if you had a little bit of a say, so how would you like people to?
Um, Well, for this work or this series of work, it's really up to them. Um, for actually not for the most part, everything that I have here is, would be considered abstract expressionism. So they're going to see what they want, and I'm completely okay with that. The titles are there, and they may guide the viewer a little bit, or maybe allow the viewer to see where I was going with it, or what I thought about the work afterwards. But it's for them. It's
Right.
yeah.
Okay. John, how would you like people to take in your work, or what thoughts would you want your audience to have?
The first thing I would like people to do when they take a look at my work is I want black people to understand, which I'm talking to you, black people out there listening. I want you all to understand that I am a visual griot, and that a lot of times you don't have to like my work. You don't have to respect my work. But you got to love it. So at the end of the day, when you look at my work and you see elements of voodoo, you see elements of hoodoo, I don't want you to be scared when you look at it. I want you to understand at the end of the day, what you are seeing is black gods and goddesses. Now, this isn't to deter you from whatever your spiritual belief is, but one thing I want black people to understand is before we were enslaved, before we were captured, before we were sold off to the white folks, whether it be the Portuguese, whether it be the Irish, whether it be the French, we had our own culture, we had our own gods we believe in. So I believe in order for us to battle the system of white supremacy, you have to undo everything that comes with white supremacy. And with that, you have to get rid of the ideology of Christianity and turn the other cheek and all this other bullshit that we have been fed throughout antiquity since 1626. And we have to start picking up our old gods. And it should be scary. It should freak you out a little bit because it's something that you aren't inclined to understanding. But when you look at the history of voodoo, if you look at it, voodoo versus white supremacy, voodoo has a winning record. You start with the Haitians and all that. So, which is another reason why you see my Haitian artwork and things calling about the Haitian Revolution, is because they ultimately set the tone for everything that you see now, because they were the first ones as a whole and as a community to sit here and say, nah, fuck that. We dying on our feet. So that's what I want everybody to understand, and what I want everybody to get inside their head, whether I have to pound it home, because I'm not going to stop. I want you to understand and appreciate the fact that we have our own gods and goddesses, and each one can have something that you can relate to, and you could probably pick out to be your avatar. I picked out the Baron Samedi, even though I may be saying the name wrong. He understands, but he comes in my dreams. We talk all the time. But I just love him so much, So you can just pick out ones you like and just go from there. And it don't even have to be voodoo. It could be the Orishas, it could be the Loa, it could be the Iwa, it could be any of them. Just make sure that your gods look like you, and that's black.
I can respect that, and I can respect your work. Both of you guys' work. I can respect this show.
Thank you.
Any last remarks, any closing remarks you want to say to the people while we got them?
I just want to say thank you. To thank everybody here for coming in and listening to us. And thank you, Wajan, for allowing me to show. Appreciate it.
Any last remarks, John?
Yes, I want to thank everybody for coming through, showing me love, and everybody who came to my art show. Thank you for coming out, checking us out. And hopefully look for more in the near future. And I'm still going to bring that raw, that uncut, that you can't stare away, that's going to driving force, that's going to bring you to your knees and make you accept the fact that my blackness is different from all the artists' blackness. And eventually you will bend the knee and you will join my side. That's the king's decree. Who that, baby?
I love it. And we want to say thank you to everyone that continues to support our arts, continues to support Washington, D.C., the Art of Noize. Look forward to more programs, more artist talks coming throughout the year. And we hope to continue to bring you wonderful culture. Thank you.